Well, welcome everybody. I appreciate you joining us today for our seminar on unlocking energy savings through AI and machine learning. My name is Wayne Dean. I'm a Vice President of Sales and Marketing for DataWrangler by Clockworks. I'm going to apologize to you in advance. I am going to talk very rapidly. I'm going to try and cover a lot of materials soon so I don't take a lot of your time, but I always start these with a little story. Albert Einstein was asked one time what his home phone number was, and he went to the phone book to look it up. He said, I never keep anything up here, and pointing to his head, I never keep anything up here that I can find somewhere else. So the moral of that story is if I go through this presentation rapidly, the idea is I will send you the link that you can watch it again so that you can pick out certain areas that maybe you weren't sure of or didn't have an understanding for. But that's the upfront contract with you, is that I'm going to take about 15 to 20 minutes to go through this as quickly as possible, but give you the opportunity to refer back to this for additional information. So the agenda is, again, we're going to talk a little bit briefly about understanding artificial intelligence, especially in the energy field. We'll talk about the demand charges on a typical energy bill for either a school or a large industrial account and how the the electrical and power companies bill you. I'll give you a little bit of some optimization and case studies, some things that we've already done to help people. A little bit at the end about us, and actually in the chat box, you can put in any questions. Typically, I don't get a lot of questions on these, but we'll give you the link for us to be able to follow up later if you want. So what is artificial intelligence? Well, there's a lot of good, bad, negative thoughts out there, especially in the last month, where people think that artificial intelligence is going to be able to write songs and put people out of the song industry, out of business. And just the capability to give humans, the machines, that ability to learn from experiences, to think, create, and speak, and to judge and make some decisions. Yet artificial intelligence can only work based on how much information is put into the program. So artificial intelligent machines can solve problems, make suggestions, decisions, and perform tasks that have required a lot of human time to solve. Artificial intelligence can only work based on the information the humans put into it. But what it certainly does is the same thing we all know about computing, and it just elevates the time and can quickly do things that it would take a human a lot of time to do. As we start talking a little bit about DataWrangler and our energy data as a service product, one could probably do some of the things that we do, but it would just take days to figure out some of the things that our AI can do in seconds. So we use artificial intelligence and machine learning to create, we've created these algorithms that can learn a building's patterns for using electricity, and the data is what we're gathering. Now, different AIs use that data differently. Some artificial intelligence uses the data and then it is handed off to a human to implement the data. There is some AI where the AI is also programmed to diagnose and monitor, but at the same time then treat. But it just, again, depends on how much human interaction is wanted and how much deep learning is necessary in each one of the type of programs. But the benefits of AI, obviously one of the primary benefits is AI is that it can work tirelessly without getting tired or needing breaks. AI can perform these repetitive tasks such as data entry or analysis more quickly than humans can. For example, an AI system called Lisa can process data for cancer research at a rate of 150,000 cells per second, which is far beyond the capability of human researchers. And this can free up humans to focus more on complex and creative tasks overall. Another exciting development of AI is this emergence of generative AI, which is capable of creating new content and ideas. And this is one that maybe some of you have seen in the media lately, where it really can take such as music or art and even write articles for us. That's not necessarily what we're talking about in this day's session today. We're mostly talking about using AI to analyze energy data. So we're not really taking over a building or creating new content. But there are some limits to AI. Again, AI is limited by how much information is inputted. Some of you that are on this webinar right now might use a CRM system, a contact management program. And again, that's only as good as how much information is inputted by either the sales team or the client service team. So again, it's limited as far as its effectiveness because we still need that human interaction. Again, comparing AI and human productivity, that's the biggest thing. When you start talking about how much AI can do compared to the human brain can process information, again, based on what input out or garbage in, garbage out. AI is the same thing. It can just do it so much faster. And that's what one needs to think about when we start going into the product or service that we offer. But it only works from that data that it's given. So it's not like it's creating its own set of data. It's only working from wherever that data comes from that the humans input into the AI. So we shouldn't be afraid of AI. But to understand how AI can be deployed in energy savings, you first need to understand how power companies use data to charge consumers for electricity. So the next couple of slides are really to help you understand a large consumer of electrical power. Understand the electric bill and the difference between energy use and demand. So on the slide that's in front of you, the gray area is the area throughout the day of how a building might be using power and how much they're charged for consuming kilowatts of power. So obviously in the middle of the night, there's not a lot of consumption. 6 o'clock, the building starts open. People start coming in the building. The HVAC kicks on, and there's a peak set maybe at about 1 o'clock. After everybody comes back for lunch, the AC is the highest use of temps. What one needs to understand is how the power companies bill you for not only the gray area, how much you consume, but when you use power throughout the day. And they take this peak, whatever it is throughout the day, and that is what they set for the kilowatts that you're going to get charged for the rest of the day. So here's on a typical bill. In this bill, for example, the actual energy use for peak time. And a peak time on this, depending on the, let me look up here where it says general secondary, that is the tariff that they're on. So they be on a tariff where between 9 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock at night is their peak time. And they might be charged at, 0.086 cents per kilowatt. So that came up to 9,977. But then the off-peak time from 9 at night to 9 in the morning, the kilowatt usage drops down and they're charged 5,000. So here they're charged over about 15,000 for the consumption. But look at the demand. The power companies come back and say, we're going to charge you $18 per kilowatt when you set a peak demand for when you, so in this situation on May 2nd, they set a peak and they got charged $14,000 for that peak. And then they had what's called a customer demand. The customer demand is the power company says, we're going to take the last 11 months, and we're going to look at the last 11 months. Whatever day in the last 11 months you set the highest usage of electricity, we're going to charge you that again. So if you look at this, when you go back to the 13th of July in 22, that day they were charged for kilowatts at $3.07. 20,000. They already paid this 2,560, but the power company's charging them again. So if you look at this bill, 51% of the bill is not consumption, how much power, but it's when they used it. Now, the power companies say we have to charge people who use more power at the most optimal times more money to cover our infrastructure, building new high lines, power plants, all that kind of stuff. Here's my challenge or issue with that. The power companies charging these people a demand usage. This isn't consumption when they use the power, even though it didn't cost the power company more money at that time to produce that power. It costs them the same amount of money to produce power in the middle of the night as it does at 10:30 in the morning, but they're charging people more for it. So a lot of people don't understand how this is done. Well, what the power companies do is they take 15-minute readings. The power company looks at the bill, and you don't see this, but they take it into 15-minute readings throughout the day. And whenever you set the highest peak, that's what you're charged for the rest of the month. So if you set the peak in a big building at 1 o'clock on Thursday, the 20th of the month, and that was only for 1 second, everybody turned everything on the plant, all the power came up on the plant, you get charged that for the rest of the month. So the idea is, if you think about that rolling charge, so they're charging you for the demand charge, then they're charging you for the delivery charge. We also call it the trailing charge, where they take that 15-minute interval and start charging you more for it. So you get that charged again. So again, here's another example of somebody's bill when it was set at those dates. Remember what we talked about when you set that peak. Again, this is 10 months earlier that they got charged again for what they charged back then. So again, you got to look at your bill and start thinking about, boy, am I on the right tariff? Boy, what is going on at that when those peaks are set? That AI can be used to monitor my building, get a history or a pattern of how my building uses power, and then kick back optimization suggestions for what we can do to just shift. And see, most people think that you need to do what's called load shifting. You need to, well, boy, everything's on. Everybody comes in the building after lunch, turns on all the equipment, all the machines. We set a peak at 1 o'clock. Boy, we can't shift that to 1 o'clock in the morning. Remember, those 15-minute increments that the power company is reading it, sometimes all you have to do is shift something that a major component of usage of something, you need to shift it only like 2 minutes until the next peak, and you're not contributing all of the equipment in the building to that one peak. So the idea is, what can you do to lower the peak? What can be shifted, and sometimes only a few minutes? The human brain can't comprehend and see all that and immediately do that, where AI can look at your building and create a pattern. Simple things like, hey, the peak is set at 1:10 because everybody's coming back from lunch, turning on all the machines. What if you staggered lunch by just a couple of minutes, or just had one operator wait until 1:15 to turn on his machine, or somebody else came back to lunch at 12:59? That's what AI can do for you, as far as help identify ways that you can shift something in your building just a few minutes to lower that peak. So understanding that monthly charge, the recurring demand charge, understanding that your demand charges are typically 30 to 70% of your bill. And many people that are listening to us right now have probably done a lot of things to reduce the consumption part of the bill. Don't confuse what AI can do with like an energy audit. An energy audit typically is the type of company that comes in and does retrofitting or lighting upgrades and says, boy, if you change these fluorescent lights in your building to T1s, you'll save this amount of power over a course of a year, and it's going to cost you this. And the ROI might be 2 or 3 years to pay that back. That's not necessarily what AI on demand services does. AI looks at what's going on in the building and what can be done without capital expenditures, without upgrading equipment, just taking the current things that you have now. Or the AI can at least predict and prescribe in advance and say, well, if you did this retrofitting, this is what you would save, so that you can decide whether it's worth it or not. So again, it's just data. Knowledge is power. And the more energy, data, and knowledge you have, the more power you have. So when you look at what AI can do, and like the solution that we're offering, our Internet of Things solution, we take all the data we can from the building. We mix that data with real-time kilowatt pricing, because that real-time kilowatt pricing changes throughout the day. So the AI can take that and monitor it and say, boy, if you shift it from something you're getting charged $18 per kilowatt to this time where it drops down to $14 per kilowatt, here's what you'll save by doing it. Take in real-time weather and sit there and say, hey, it's going to be this afternoon, it's going to be cloudy. So even though your HVAC unit is programmed to turn on at 8 in the morning and turn off at 6, maybe you should coast it this afternoon, because you don't need as much as that power running for the HVAC. Maybe you can just move air a little bit and not reduce the temperature. So the idea is, take as much information from the building, put it into the AI or the machine learning to kick back and prescribe building optimizations for load shifting, energy storage, HVAC, lighting, power factor. And to help some of you that might not be aware of power factor, the power company sends you so much power down the grid. And they say, look, typically, we're going to send you power. If you don't utilize efficiently. 90% of the power that we're sending you because you've got antiquated equipment or you're wasting the power, you get that on a bill as a fine. I've seen some like, boy, they're only using 78%. So the power company's charging them, I had one company, $30,000 more for power factor. We can identify, AI can identify power factor issues and what's causing them. What maybe the chillers were set wrong, even from the factory set points. Boy, you've got people, all your employees are plugging in their HVA, their cars for electric vehicles for charging. Boy, what if those are monitored and at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when a typical peak is setting and that is contributing to it, that there's a timer that it just shuts off that monitoring of the EV charging stations. So that's what AI can do for you that a human can't do. This is an example of a day in a building where you start looking at the peaks of those orange. And then the AI is the blue. The AI has come back and made optimization suggestions to reduce that consumption and that peak throughout the day through monitoring it and providing some type of control optimizations with zero capital cost. So it's really exciting when somebody can see exactly a daily blueprint of how and when the building is using power. And in this case, a complete reduction in kilowatts. Again, we can look at other ways to sit there and say, okay, what's going on in this gap right now? Boy, at 9 o'clock, everything's coming here, and there's really a slowdown. Is there anything that, boy, since you got this little peak here of going down, can we shift this over here to 9 o'clock and reduce even further? So the idea is AI can look at your building and again, predict and prescribe shifts in your building without changing how you make what you make. The last thing we want to do is use AI to tell you how to stop making your widgets or what it is that you want. It's just how to more efficiently run those machines throughout your building without having that human element and potential error. So looking at the different peaks, we can take and subscribe, say, okay, what's going on in here? And we can shift this next month to maybe over here at 6. So again, looking at the peak and the on peak, looking at which is better for you. In this situation, we're recommending to the client, the AI is saying, hey, you should change your tariff. You're on a tariff now that isn't really conducive to how you use power. Go to the power company and look at the tariff. And if you haven't done it, you should talk to your power company about the tariffs that you're on. The power companies should help you reduce without bringing in a third party. But again, sometimes the power companies will say, yeah, we'll change your tariff so that your demand goes down, but we're going to charge you more for kilowatt for consumption. The nice thing about AI will run a program to tell you that's great, that yeah, you might end up spending more on a different tariff for consumption, but overall you'll save because your demand charges will be reduced. So start focusing on things that are causing peak. In this situation, it was a failed equipment that was running at too much capacity. So AI can sit there and tell you whether a piece of equipment is going to burn out and it's creating a spike because it's not running at its full optimization. And then you can look at the power factor corrector that I talked about before. We can save on power factor. Again, base load reducing of controlling optimization. So remember, anytime that you're reducing your consumption and your demand, you're contributing to reducing your carbon footprint. So we can sit there and AI can come back and sit there and say, well, this is what you saved actually money in kilowatts, but here's what you did. And they can do it in a formula and saying, hey, your changes based on the AI recommendations resulted in the savings of a carbon reduction of equal to taking 3 cars off of the street today, or equal to changing coal from in an energy furnace from coal to oil. And it can give you this data as to what of these control optimizations and load shifting really reduce your carbon footprint. So typically, companies are finding 10, 15, and even as much as 20% by using AI to monitor their energy uses and kick back optimization suggestions. And that's really what we do, is sit there and look at a building. And how we do it is by installing a single dent meter. The dent meter goes in and we can gather data. And I want to explain to you this term I use, different is better than better. Certainly, there are some companies that can go out there and put different controls on all of your components in your building and tell you that this control uses this or this building uses this. The problem is that cost can be $80,000 to $100,000 to monitor and put metering on all components in your building. With AI, sometimes you can do that with only one meter that is specifically programmed to analyze the incoming amperage and the time and usage throughout the day, and then kick back optimization suggestions based on only one main load meter that's been specifically programmed with software to gather the data that multiple meters would have to have used in the past. So, in conclusion, here's what I'd like you to think about. If you're interested in hearing more, simply just upload your energy bill, a copy of your bill, to utilitybill.clockworks.com, and we'll take a look at what your demand charges are. Remember these original samples of bills I showed you. We'll come back and provide you potential savings with the type of program that you might apply for through DataWrangler. So the idea is nothing happens without a bill. We don't know if we can help you. We don't know if AI is suitable for you, but it is the way that a lot of the industry is going to be able to monitor energy uses. As the power companies are doing 10 to 15% rate increases every year, companies are doing a lot, obviously, to reduce the consumption, but it's not keeping up with those rate increases. So when you think about, boy, we've done everything we can to reduce consumption, yeah, but have you used artificial intelligence and machine learning to reduce the demand? So the next step is, if you want to go any further, do that. Send us the bill. I'm going to look in the chat to see if anybody's put any questions in there. If there's any questions in the chat you want, or if anybody wants to unmute themselves and ask me a question, I'd be glad to try and address any of those questions right now. Okay. All right. So here's what you can do. I will send you the link to this recording so you can go back to it. On the recording, we'll have our contact information for myself and some of our salespeople that you can talk to. But again, nothing happens without an energy bill. So again, I appreciate your listening to us today, and let us know if you have any questions. But next step is send us a bill if you can. All right. Thank you very much.